2022 has been a year of many beloved franchises failing to meet our fan expectations. But today we have a TV show that loves and respects its source material, and at times betters it, which is a very rare sight in today's world. I'm talking about His Dark Materials on HBO BBC. It's back for its third and final season, until of course they adapt the sequel series, but that's a whole other video for another day. And this is actually the second attempt to adapt His Dark Materials for a large mainstream audience. After the less than faithful movie, The Golden Compass, the movie itself isn't completely awful, but it does have so many changes and it waters down a lot of the religious elements and other controversial topics. Whilst this show is far closer to the books, but we could also argue it needs a couple other seasons. One book, one season is the minimum, and I think they've got away with it. At times it feels rushed, but overall it's a success. And they've done it justice in my opinion. It's not a word for word adaptation, but most of the important themes and ideas are present. The multiverse, politics, religion, growing up, freedom, war, love. This is not your run-of-the-mill kids fantasy TV show, which I find is a positive because so many other rival TV shows have been dumbed down. But at the same time, if you aren't paying attention to His Dark Materials, it's very easy to get lost, especially this far into the story. Gone are the days of little Lyra looking for her lost best friend up in the north, with a talking polar bear. At this stage, we are in all-out war against the false god, the Authority, and his regent, Metatron, with Lyra set up to fulfill the prophecy of the second Eve. And I think that premise could intimidate many who are just here for a fun bit of adventure. But if you're willing to stick with it, you will be highly rewarded. Especially once Lyra reaches the land of the dead. Because I feel you have to bear with the first 3 episodes this time around. They're fine, at times they're actually exceptional, but they can be very slow and full of exposition. Lyra spends most of it asleep, and the Magisterium are not the most exciting characters. They're fine when Mrs. Coulter's there, but on their own, do we care? And Azriel recruiting Ugunwe for his army kind of feels out of place to me. Kind of feels like it should have been in season 2. But we all know the situation there because Azriel was meant to have his own episode in season 2, but it was cut and it was reduced to 7 episodes instead of 8. But he did show up in a sort of post-credits scene at the end of the second season. We see him form an alliance with Zephania and her fellow angels, who have sided against the Authority. But at the same time, I'm glad we're getting more James McAvoy, and the show is definitely making the most of him. They know he is their biggest star. And at times, the series is at its best when McAvoy's Azriel and Ruth Wilson's Mrs. Coulter are on screen together. And I, for one, wouldn't mind a prequel miniseries all about their infamous romance, which leads to the birth of Lyra. I would say McAvoy and Wilson are by far the best actors on the show, but at the same time, there's a lot of solid performances, especially from the younger cast. Daphne Keane and Amir Wilson have really grown into their roles, especially in that last episode. In the books, the final few scenes between Will and Lyra are truly heartbreaking, and I feel that was going to be the toughest challenge for this season, to bring out the same energy. But I think the show had done it justice, and there must have been about 3 or 4 moments in that episode alone that brought tears to our eyes, especially at the end when they go their separate ways. And we get the montage of them sitting on the bench every year on the same day, in their own separate worlds. But don't forget a few episodes earlier when Lyra has to leave Pan behind in the land of the dead. There's a lot of emotion in the later half of this season. Of course we have the big CGI battle with angels, it's awesome and all that, but I find it's the characters that really stand out. When they are given something to do. For example, Miriam alone, she walks some more, and I can imagine casual fans don't understand the concept of being the serpent. But once she meets the Malefa, that all changes. And I really love the scenes where she learns their language and starts becoming one of the group. And I know the Malefa aren't 100% accurate to the books, but I kind of like their design. At first, when I saw it weeks ago, I was unsure. Their bodies are different, and I was asking the question, where are the wheels? But then we kind of get them, so it's all forgiven. And I think we also have to talk about how gorgeous this show looks, with the demons at the forefront. Especially the golden monkey, who looks and feels real. But I kind of wish we got to see more of Yorick, especially during the final battle. I believe we only had him and another unnamed bear, instead of a full army of Panzerborn, whose storyline has been watered down. It's kind of there when Yorick mentions to Azriel about his window in the north ruining the bear's homeland. But in the books, the bears have to go to the Himalayas. They have to leave their home in the north because of the window that Azriel made. it's melting their ice so it's become unstable for them to live in and hunt. And like I said, it's hinted at when Yorick sees the window closing, but I kind of wish we got more of him in general. He gets to reunite with Lyra, fix the knife, we even get a rather comical scene where he kicks Azrael's ass, but at the same time I imagine he's not cheap to put on screen because of the sheer amount of CGI work that goes into him, especially with all the angels, demons, brand new worlds, and other exciting beings being brought to life. Sacrifices have to be made. This show isn't the biggest fantasy show out there. It doesn't have bottomless rings of power pockets. It doesn't have the reputation of House of the Dragon. So budget is a factor. But all things considered, His Dark Material Season 3 is well thought out, is a wonderful adaptation that brings forward all the important elements and characters from the books, whilst also adding more to them. And it hits you in the feels many times, especially in that last episode, which I think might be my favourite episode this season and is up there for a contender for all three. That montage of Will and Lyra parting ways and then growing up, yet always returning to the bench every year broke me, just like in the books. Same reaction on screen, and that's what you're looking for when it comes to an adaptation. But like I said, I think you have to stick around and get through the first couple, maybe 3 episodes, but then your patience will be rewarded. And of course, we have to talk about the true ending, about hints about what's to come in the future, about Lyra and Pan's next adventure, which of course is in the Book of Dust series. And the first book, La Belle Sauvage, was kind of in this show way back in season 1 when Azrael brings Lyra to Oxford during the flood. Book 1 is when Lyra's a baby, book 2 she's in her 20s, and book 3 hasn't been written yet. But I'm sure the producers of Bad Wolf, BBC and HBO are knocking at Philip Pullman's door to get the rights to those books. And that's something I'd love to see in a few years' time when Daphne Keen's a bit older and a bit more experienced. And of course, once the trilogy is completed, don't go into the Secret Commonwealth with that third book still unwritten. But of course, it all depends on how much money this show has made. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I kind of feel it's been a success. Of course, we've had diminished returns every season, but that's expected. Like I said, it's not the biggest TV show, it's not a rival for House of the Dragon. But I also feel they could have done a better job at promoting the series. Because in season 1 we're going to San Diego Comic Con, and the release schedule for the final season was horrendous, with HBO getting it early, but then BBC get it and then it drops all on the iPlayer, but then they show every episode on a Sunday, and it's still running right now. I kind of feel it was a bit of a mess, and I don't want to see anything like that again in the future, but I suppose they had the reason. But for now guys, make sure you post your thoughts on His Dark Material Season 3 and the series as a whole. For me, I'm satisfied with how it ended. Wasn't perfect, but when it comes to a TV show that deals with so many controversial topics, so many complicated storylines, it could have been a lot worse. So overall, I am very happy with what we got, and I want to see more. Yeah guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon.